We have discussed the different types of polygons, including triangle. Today, we're going to talk about triangles and how we can classify them. Now, we know that a triangle has 3 sides, and we know that a triangle has 3 angles. When we look at this picture, we can see a bunch of different triangles. And we know that all of these triangles have 3 angles, and we know that all of these triangles have 3 sides. But there's different ways we can classify these triangles because they all look different. One way we can classify triangles is by the length of their sides. The other way we can classify triangles is by the openness of their angles. One way we measure triangles is by the length of their sides. If all 3 sides are equal length, we call it an equilateral triangle. The word equal is in the name to help you remember that all 3 sides are an equal length. If you look at this quilt page, it is made up of equilateral triangles. Each triangle has an equal length on all 3 sides. And the reason why it looks this way is because when all 3 sides are the same, you can line them up and make this really neat design, and they all fit into each other. This entire page is filled with equilateral triangles. When we look at a triangle that has 2 sides that are equal, we call that an isosceles triangle. That means 2 sides are the same length, and then the third side is a different length. If you look at this quilt page, it's made up of isosceles triangles. The brown triangles have 2 sides that are equal length, then the third side is a different length. If you look at the pink triangles, 2 sides are the same length, then the third side is a different length. The last way to classify a triangle by sides is if none of the lengths are the same. Each side is a different length, and we call that a scalene triangle. This quilt page is made up of scalene triangles. Each side of each triangle is a different length. Even the triangles on the outside are scalene triangles. None of them share the same length. It's a pretty neat design, but it's not as neat and tidy as that equilateral triangle where everything fit in. Ah, yes, the scalene triangle. Each side is a different length. To review, when we categorize a triangle by the length of their sides, we have 3 different choices. When all 3 sides are equal, we call it an equilateral triangle. When only 2 sides are equal, we call it an isosceles triangle. And when all 3 sides are different lengths, we call it a scalene triangle. I guess you could say that it's as easy as 3, 2, 1. Another way that we can classify triangles is by the openness of their angles. When you look at a triangle and all 3 angles are smaller than a right angle, they're acute angles, then we call it an acute triangle. When you look at a triangle and one of the angles are larger than a right angle, then we call that an obtuse triangle. Now I know that 2 of the angles are actually acute, but when there's one obtuse angle, we call it an obtuse triangle. When the angle is a right angle and it makes a square corner, we call that a right triangle. So to review, when we have a triangle that makes a right angle, we call it a right triangle. When we have a triangle where all of the angles are acute, we call it an acute triangle because it's so cute, it's small angles. And when we have a triangle when one of the angles are obtuse, we call it an hang loose obtuse triangle. Now that we've gone over the different ways to classify a triangle, take a look at this picture again. Can you classify these triangles into different groups? I'll give you some time to do this. Please push pause on the video. Now that we've spent some time classifying triangles, see if you can find some triangles in the real world today and try your hand at classifying them.